Hello everyone, JD Mitra here, and I want to welcome each and every one of you to the second Monday Moneymaker. And I got some great reviews. A lot of people were really grateful for the last one, coaching on a subject that's a little uncomfortable for people, and that's how to make sales calls. So I'm so glad that I've gotten such a great response up until now on this Moneymaker Monday, and there'll be more to come. Today is another, in my opinion, a controversial one. I already got some feedback, very interesting feedback. Today's talk is rich people versus poor people. And the feedback that I got, you know, some people got on me today. They were like, come on, JD, you know, why are you getting on poor people? And I want to let you know I don't dislike, I don't have a negative opinion about poor people. It's just about the mentality. It's really about the ideology of scarcity versus abundance. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want for each and every one of you, I want you to think about how, when we're doing this talk, we're going to cover 12 points. And when we cover these 12 points, I want you to think about where you fall. How do you classify yourself in terms of your mindset when it comes to thinking rich versus thinking poor, or what I like to say, thinking big versus thinking small. And I want to say before we get started on these 12 points, I think not everyone, but certainly some people have that DNA inside them, that Walter White, if you guys watch Breaking Bad, that Walter White, that Heisenberg DNA, that never-ending relentlessness, that will to succeed, even when the chips are down. And I want you to know that wealth has nothing to do with the cards that you're dealt. I think that a lot of people think that wealth is circumstantial, that it's something you're born into. But the reality is that the biggest thing that you can have in order to create wealth is not who were your parents, not what background you came from, not how much money you had in the bank when you first got started, but a mindset of abundance, a mindset that there's plenty out there. And there's a reason why poor people stay poor, and that is because of the mindset. 95% of poor people remain poor. And there's a famous quote by Bill Gates. Bill Gates says, "It's not your fault that you were born poor, but it is your fault that you remain poor. It's your fault that you die poor." And that's something that each and every one of us has a choice. We all have a choice in whether we want to change our thinking, change our mindset. And we're going to cover 12 points. 12 points. So for all of you out there, if you want to take some notes, I recommend you take out your pen and paper and really start to imagine taking a sheet of paper and putting on one side rich thinking versus poor thinking, right? And you just draw a line down the middle. And again, we're going to cover 12 points of how rich people think and how poor people think. And I want you to be honest. Like, this is like a real gut check moment for you to be honest with yourself about how you think. Do you think like a rich person, or do you think like a poor person? So without further ado, we're going to get started. The first point, this is point number 1. Poor people are skeptical. What do I mean by skeptical? Poor people have the mindset that everything is a ripoff. And by the way, poor people know everything. There's nothing you could teach a poor person. They know, oh, I know that already, JD. That's like a very typical thing. Or don't do that. That's a ripoff. That's a ripoff. You're going to get ripped off if you do that. So poor people often think that they know more than they do. And rich people, on the other hand, adversely, rich people are far more trusting. Now, what do I mean by trusting? Rich people, they're not trusting like they're naive, like they don't think that there's people out there that would rip them off. But rich people are all about getting the information. They're about getting the information. So they will allow you to talk to them and self-express yourself and get the information. Rich people are all about getting the information. So poor people are skeptical, and they'll say that that's a ripoff, and they'll just basically condemn it from the beginning. Whereas poor people will have the open mind to, at the very least, find out what is this all about, and they will allow you. They will create that platform for you to self-express yourself. So that's number 1: skepticism versus being open-minded. Okay, so number 2, Poor people, let's start with poor people. Number two, poor people are blamers. What do I mean by blamers? Poor people always have some negative story to talk about why they didn't get their love, why they didn't make their money, why they didn't get that job. If my dad didn't leave my mom when I was 7 years old, if I only got a college degree, if I wasn't raised in a single mom home, I would have been more successful. There's always like a story that poor people have that keeps them poor, that keeps them in that cycle and keeps them in that mindset. It's almost like they've got a back door, where they're getting a payoff for basically staying in a situation where they don't have to be responsible. So they've got a story already built in to why it's not their fault for not being successful. Whereas rich people have this mindset that everything happens for a reason. There's a mindset that there's a higher power out there. There's a mindset that there's a perfect integrity to the universe, and that anything that's happening in my life, any circumstance that's happening in my life, is happening for a reason. There's like a purpose behind it. Even my trials and tribulations. What's up, Lewis? What's up, Locke? What's up, Michelle? So basically, there's a mindset that this is bigger than me. This is bigger than my circumstances. That there's something out there for me to get. So again, number two, poor people are blamers. They blame everything. They blame people. They blame circumstances. Whereas wealthy people have the mindset to think that everything is happening for a reason. There's some reason why I have to go through this. So that's number two. Number three, poor people, and I kind of covered this in the first one, poor people, they assume a lot. They assume too much. And what do I mean by assume too much? They'll probably say something to the effect of, well, I'm not going to call that person. They're probably too busy to take my call. So there's like an assumption that they make up, right? There's an assumption that they make up, but it's really based on fear. That's really what it boils down to. It's a fear-based mentality that gets them off the hook for not even having to try. And I've said this before, you miss 100% of the opportunities you don't take. 100% of the opportunities you don't take. So poor people assume a lot, whereas wealthy people, adversely, they have more of a why not attitude. And when I say why not, I'm talking about like having an attitude of like a glass half full, optimistic approach to things. What if I called Steven Spielberg's brother who lives in my cousin's roommate's building, and then, or what if I just went up to his building and just showed up and introduced myself? Like they have that mindset that anything is possible. What if I can go out there and introduce myself to so-and-so? Or what if I can network and I can meet the person who knows the person who knows the person? So that is the what if mentality, the anything is possible mentality, instead of assuming that nothing is possible. Assume that, oh, I know that already. I already know that person's too busy to talk to me. So that's number three. Number four is poor people speak in they. They. It's us against them. It's like a typical thing that a poor person might say is, well, they don't pay me enough to deal with this bullshit. They don't pay me enough to handle that, or that's them. That has nothing to do with me. Whereas rich people, they don't think in terms of isolation. They think in terms of inclusion. And what I mean by that is instead of using words like they use words like we. They use words like our. So something that a mindset of a rich person might say is something like, we value and are committed to what our beliefs are, or our values are based on what we believe for this company, for this organization. So there's almost like a all-inclusive attitude. It's kind of like when you realize that a movement, that your message is more than just a message, it's a movement. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than you. And this, again, it comes from the mindset of abundance, the mindset of, what is my mission? What is my role in this life? Why am I here on this planet? It is far bigger than my circumstances. It's far bigger than anything that I'm making more important than my actual role here on this planet. So again, coming from the mindset of abundance versus coming from the mindset of scarcity, coming from the mindset of isolation. Number 5. So number 5 for poor people are always looking for the cheapest way to get something. So for example, a poor person will go out on Black Friday, and don't admit everyone has done this. I have done this too. Gone on Black Friday, had your turkey, and then you just run around New York or run around wherever you're from, into the malls, into the shopping, and fighting with other people, looking at clearance racks, and trying to save 10%, 20%, 30%. And I'm here to tell you that nobody got rich cutting coupons. Nobody got rich cutting coupons. And it's not that it's not good to save. It's a great thing to save. And at the same time, when you're talking about like your time, like how valuable is your time? What is your time worth to you? And what could your time be better used for? So when we talk about rich people are always looking at it from not what is the cheapest way, what is the best way? What is the best way that I can create, that I can get over my learning curves? What is the best advisors that I can have? What are the best mentors I can have? What are the best services that I could pay for in order to move my company forward, move my strategy forward? So they don't look for what's cheap. They look for what's best. They look for what's most efficient. They look for what's going to be more valuable in the long run versus looking for what is going to save them money in the short run. Okay? And speaking of spending, because we just talked about spending on clearance racks and everything, let's talk about spending, because poor people, and this is number 6, right? We've covered 5 so far. We're going to cover 12. Number 6 is poor people spend on depreciating assets and rich people spend on appreciating assets. What do I mean by depreciating assets? If you have a pair of Jordans that cost $200-$300 and you don't play professional basketball, that's the mindset of a poor person. Now, you can say it's fashionable and you can say it's within your budget. That's fine. But what I'm saying to you is that money, there's an opportunity cost to every single dollar that we spend. There's an opportunity cost to every single thing that we spend. So rather than spending it on something like that, a wealthy person will spend it on something that's what's called an appreciating asset. What is an example of an appreciating asset? An appreciating asset could be books for learning, a course for learning, something that's going to make them more marketable, something that's going to make them more valuable. Rich people spend on mentorship, going out there and finding people, mentors that can cut their learning curve. Rich people spend on infrastructure, things that are going to make their overall company, their overall life more efficient. Rich people, I mentioned mentorship, networking. That's another way of spending, not spending your money, but spending your time. Spending your time on networking on some type of periodic basis so that you can meet people that are influencers in your industry, people that could move your career forward, move your business forward, move your product line, your service, whatever it is that you're promoting forward in such a way that, again, it takes years off of your learning curve, because essentially those mentors, by saying one thing, they might take you straight to the top and save you years of mistakes that they made, that they're basically essentially teaching you how to not make those mistakes again, right? So it's not just about investing in terms of money, but it's also investing in terms of time. And whereas, like I said, with poor people, depreciating assets, sneakers, clothes, things that don't have a return, they're things that are not sustainable. They're not gonna benefit you after that product is purchased and that product is used up, essentially. So that's number 6, is spending on depreciating assets versus spending on appreciating assets. Another thing, and this is the killer for me. This is the thing that, when they say common sense isn't common, this is the one that just drives me insane, is poor people seek weak advice from people that shouldn't be giving advice in certain areas. Like, for example, would you take advice from a broke person? Would you take financial advice from a broke person? And you know what? We've all done it at one point or another. Taken financial advice from a broke person, taken relationship advice from a single person that has been single for like a decade, taking advice from people that To be completely honest, you can love them. They can be your family member or your boy or, you know, a friend. And at the same time, you gotta look at who you're getting advice from. Who are you surrounding to give you advice? I say, show me your top 5 friends and I'll show you the next 5 years of your life, because association is so important. Wealthy people, their mindset is, I am going to get advised by people that are ahead of me. Wealthy people think about, who is the best person in my industry to advise me on finances? Who's the person that would be best to advise me on my relationships, on spirituality? And they look for experts. They look for advisors that, again, can shorten their learning curve, teach them something that they don't know, but teach them from what? From experience, from result-based experience. Tony Robbins once said in the Learning Annex, this is about 15 years ago, he said that his clients, this blew my mind. He has clients, like I'm talking about billionaire clients, that pay him $1 million to advise them. And I think about that. I'm like, why would you spend $1 million to have Tony Robbins advise you? But if you think about a billionaire mentality, with all of the money that he has invested in infrastructure, with all the money that he's invested in whatever it is that he's done to become a billionaire, imagine having an expert like Tony Robbins advise him. Now, we don't all have access to Tony Robbins in that way, but in your life, think about the 5 people, the 3 people that are best to advise you on finances, that are the best to advise you on your relationship. So if you're having a fight with your husband or your wife, who are you going to for that advice? Who are you going to that is going to, either support you in continuously sabotaging your relationship, or is going to actually teach you something that maybe you didn't see before? Maybe it was a blind spot that you never considered before. So again, when it comes to seeking advice, poor people get advice from their friends, and they don't use discernment to think about who is giving what advice. Whereas rich people always look for experts in their respective industries to give them advice on whatever it is, whatever endeavor they're up to. Poor people, this is number 8. Poor people are settlers. They settle. They don't go for what they want. They settle for what they think they can get. And this is the difference between fear and love. See, when you operate from fear, you don't go for what you actually love. You settle for what you think you can get. Whereas when you operate from abundance, when you operate from a wealthy mentality, you are coming from a place where you're choosing from love. And I have a terminology that I use in business, which is called pipelining. What is pipelining? My definition of pipelining, this is my own word. You guys can use it if you want to. Pipelining is when you can build an endless pipeline in your life, an endless pipeline to opportunity. So when it comes to business, finding clients, always finding creative ways to cultivate new opportunities for you to be in front of new people. That could be new clients, that could be new influencers, new affiliates that can lead you to clients, that can expand your reach. So you always want to be building your pipeline. That's what wealthy people do, is they're always looking for who is the next market. Apple is always looking for who is the next market to buy our iPhones. Okay, last year was India. This year it's China. Next year it's Vietnam. Whatever the case may be, they're always looking ahead at what market is next. And that's the opportunity that's available to all of us. To live in abundance and always look for opportunities to what I call pipeline. Look to find out new clients. Whereas poor people, they don't go for what they want. They settle for what they think they can get. That's number 8. Number 9, trading hours for dollars. Poor people value money over time. Rich people value time over money. What does that mean? A poor person, typically their mindset is going to be, well, I need more hours at the job. If I get more hours at the job, then I can make more money. So they're trading their valuable time for money. Whereas somebody who's wealthy, they're not trading hours for dollars. They're not looking to get more hours at their job. A rich person, a wealthy mindset, is somebody that says, how can I become more valuable? How can I bring value to the marketplace? How can I become so marketable that I can make double what I was making last year? You know, how can I distinguish myself? How can I create a value that doesn't exist right now that separates me from everybody else. Not even just being the best, but it's not about being the best, but it's about what makes you different. And I think about Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is a perfect example. Netflix paid Dave Chappelle $60 million to do his comedy specials. Now, I ask you the question, is Dave Chappelle worth $60 million? And that's a question that you can only answer that question if you know what Netflix is getting on the comeback. So if I told you, if Netflix was making $1 billion off of Dave Chappelle's program that they have to pay him $60 million for, would it be worth it for Netflix to pay Dave Chappelle $60 million so that they can get $1 billion? You're damn right it is. $60 million is chump change. It's chicken feed. Here you go. And that's what wealthy organizations do, is they look for the best people and people, the most talented people. So from the perspective of a wealthy person, how can you cultivate your value? How can you become more marketable today than you were yesterday? How can you be more marketable a year from now than you are currently right now? And I want each and every one of you, this is so important, I want each and every one of you to think about number 9, becoming more valuable. Forget about trading hours for dollars. Think about, how do I take my valuable time and become more marketable? And I'm going to stick on 9 for one more second. I'm going to say this. Jim Rome said this: work harder on yourself than you do at your job. Work harder on yourself than you do at your job. If you work hard at your job, you can make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. And I think that's what we're talking about. This is Monday Money Maker, right? This is the Monday Money Maker. So we're not talking about a mediocre life here. We're talking about an extraordinary life. We're talking about having a life where you've transformed the experience for your children, for yourself. And that's what number 9 is all about. How do you become more marketable in the marketplace? By working on yourself harder than you would ever work on your job. So that's number 9. And number 10, poor people, they follow the pack. They do what other people have done before. A lot of times with poor people, they might become, they might have a job, and if you ask them why they took that job, they might tell you, well, the only reason I took that job is because my father did it, or because my father's friend told me that it was a good paying job and it had good benefits and it had good security. Not a lot of inspiration there, but they do it because they don't trust in their own self to make decisions for themselves, so they would rather follow the advice of another and say to themselves that, well, the grass is greener on that side. I'd rather do that than trust myself to walk my own path, walk my own truth, and actually create something. And adversely, wealthy people are creators. What is a creator? Dale Carnegie once said, observe the masses and do the opposite. Observe the masses and do the opposite. So what does it mean to be a creator? What does it mean to observe the masses and do the opposite? It means it would be more valuable for you to create your own job, for you to look for your own demand, create a demand that doesn't exist before, or create a demand that you can identify with in the marketplace that maybe other people don't see. And that's what Steve Jobs did. If you look at Steve Jobs, long before anybody was talking about, it would be cool to, have these cell phone gadgets and be able to look up your emails and do all the things that we are able to do now that we take for granted now. He was thinking about that way back then. How do I create a demand for something that doesn't even exist? So I ask each and every one of you, you are a creator. If you are wealthy, if you have the wealthy mindset, you have the mindset to be a creator and to ask yourself, how do I create from scratch? What would I create if I can create anything? If I wasn't doing what the masses did, then what would I be doing? And I'll say it another way. If you're doing what you're doing today just because you did it yesterday, you're doomed. If you're doing what you're doing today just because you did it yesterday, you are absolutely, unequivocally doomed, because that is not living an inspired life. There's something to be said about consistency. There's something to be said about doing the same thing over and over, but it has to come from an inspired place. So that's number 10. Locke, let's see what you wrote. How do you define poor versus rich? Because I jumped in the middle of your video. So basically, Locke, what we're talking about is the difference. This is a mindset. Mindset, this is not about a monetary dollar value. This is more about the difference between having a mindset of abundance, that there's plenty out there, versus having the mindset of scarcity. And when I say scarcity, I mean that a scarcity mindset is kind of like a kill or be killed mindset, that I got to take before anybody else takes. I've got to go get it before somebody else goes and gets it. And the 10 points that we covered so far are basically to show each and every one of you which area do you classify yourself with, in a mentality of abundance or a mentality of scarcity. So with that, I want to say that, number 11, we talked about settling on a job, settling on a marriage. You know, some people are okay with a marriage that's just okay, or a job that's just okay. And then that becomes what they basically are. They find a way to live with it. They maybe distract themselves and they start to think about other areas of their life to just kind of create like an entertainment, almost to justify the fact that they're leading a mediocre life in one area of their life. Whereas with wealthy people, they go for what they truly love. And this is a great analogy. I actually heard Jim Carrey talk about this. So this is a great story. So Jim Carrey told people, this was at a graduation ceremony, he said that my father was a pretty funny guy. His father was a comedian. And Jim Carrey said that his father traded his passion of being a comic for a safe job. He became an accountant. And one day he got fired from that safe job. And one of the things that Jim Carrey learned when he was 7 years old, watching his dad come home and have to tell his family that he got fired from this so-called safe job, which he had given up his passion for, this job of being an accountant, he realized in that very moment that you can get fired and you could fail at something you don't like. So why not go after what you truly love? Why not go after what you truly are called to do in life, what you're truly inspired to do in life? And that leads me to my last point. I call it the 3 C's of poverty. The 3 C's of poverty is something that's just the killer. It's kind of like the overall issue. The cycle of poverty comes from these 3 places. And what it is complain, condemn, and criticize. If you complain, condemn, or criticize, that is a toxic environment that you are living in. A toxic environment. There's no fruit down that path. There's no cheese down that path. Complaining, criticizing, and condemning. When I use the word condemn, I remember hearing Prince EA say that no one built a statue for a critic. No one built a statue for somebody that just goes out there and condemns other people. And if you want to do something extraordinary in your life, if you want to do something that is remarkable, sometimes you got to be able to walk alone. Sometimes you got to be that outlier. You got to be that outsider. And as opposed to being somebody that complains and condemns, rich people, they come from the mindset of gratitude. And this might be one of the most important things. It's certainly one of the things that I talk about most when I train students in schools, is about being grateful. About every morning waking up in the morning, and before the soles of your feet touch the ground, being able to sit, close your eyes, and if you believe in God or whatever it is that you subscribe to, whether you believe in God or you believe in the universe, but whatever that higher power is, being grateful and thanking the universe, thanking God, and saying thank you for everything that you've given me. Thank you for all the lessons. Thank you for even my trials and tribulations, because I know that in those trials and tribulations, it wasn't that you were trying to destroy me, but rather you were trying to develop me. And I want each and every one of you to know that you have the ability to go out there and pursue your dreams, live your life purpose, go out there and really risk your brilliance, risk living a life of mediocrity, trading that in for something extraordinary. So that's my 12 points. That's my talk. I hope that each and every one of you enjoyed it. I hope you took some notes. And again, There's no right or wrong here. This is really just a matter of being able to take a look and give yourself the litmus test and say, in your life, do you come from a place of abundance or do you come from a place of scarcity? And I'm going to tell you, it's not a black or white thing. There might be areas of your life where you do come from abundance. Maybe it's in your family. Maybe you're one of those people that doesn't really take things personal, and that really is something that has your family members come up to you and talk to you about things that they wouldn't open up to other people about. But then maybe you have a scarcity mentality in business, or vice versa. But wherever you're lacking, I encourage each and every one of you to work on yourself. Like I said before, being willing to work on yourself harder than you've ever worked at anything in your life. Working on yourself harder than you've worked at your job, harder than you've worked on anything. And that's essentially what we're here for. There's a famous quote that I want to close with, and that is the famous Pablo Picasso quote. I actually quoted it on my Facebook Live from last week, which is that the meaning of life is to find your gifts, but the purpose of life is to give your gifts away. This is bigger than you. Your success is so much bigger than you. Your success is about who wins when you win. Who are the benefactors? All the people that may or may not even get to know you. Maybe you've created a ripple effect that basically win when you win. When you succeed in whatever it is that you were called to do on this planet, the people that, whether they knew you or not, are going to benefit from the fact that you lived, the fact that you were courageous enough to risk your brilliance, go after your dreams, and just live an extraordinary life and be the example for so many people. So that's my talk today. Thank you again for tuning in. This was the second Moneymaker Monday, and I'm honored to be your host. I'm going to be back next Monday and every Monday for the foreseeable future to talk to you about the thing that I'm most passionate about, which is making money. And I think that for each and every one of you, being able to make money is something that I've heard from each and every one person that I speak to is such a difficult scenario for a lot of people. There's a lot of good people out there that are kind of self-sabotaging themselves, stuck in the mud. And I want you to just keep on keeping on. You know, you're not retiring tomorrow. So this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And people underestimate what they can get done over the course of 3 decades, but then give themselves a hard time about what they did this month. So don't be discouraged about short results, not getting results in a short amount of time. You're not retiring tomorrow. Being willing to stay the course, being willing to stay and go out there and make this your life's mission to go out there and do great things for this planet and be successful. So thank you. That's my time. I love you guys all. The greatest days of your life lay ahead, and I'll see you all at the top. Take care.